Hello, welcome back to You Are My Boro. First in a couple of weeks, as we explained a couple of weeks ago, I've been otherwise engaged. Having not too many sleepless nights, actually, but well, the big bags under my eyes might tell otherwise. But
come on then, how is little Michael Riley? Izzy?
Yeah, another little boy, because we didn't know. Obviously, we didn't know. So another little boy. So I've got my own little strike partnership at home now, Ezra and Abel. All good. 3 weeks in, proper blur. It is, isn't it? You lose.
What's it been like, kind of almost reverting to kind of fandom and watching it from at home and keeping tabs on things? Man, you haven't said that. First 2 weeks of a little Ben, you're going to be very, very lucky if you have the chance to spend a bit of time watching any football. I'm sure the missus has had something to say about that.
You go upstairs and see the Abel Ales. I want to watch the last 20 minutes of Norwich. It is a bit weird. So it was an international break.
Yes, initially, yeah.
Yeah, for like a week and a half or 2 weeks or something like that, and then the last Saturday, the Birmingham game. Just being, I mean, you know how long you've done this job for. Being not doing anything on a Saturday is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, really weird. Yeah,
and posting up and watching the scores come in and not winning my bets. I think I was 1 goal off last Saturday. But hellfire. In my absence, Boro have ploughed on, haven't they? 2
Tell you what,
big wins. So going into Birmingham and Norwich, I'm thinking, if you can get 4 points there, even I don't think 2 draws would have been a disaster, you know. But I know there's all the whole Rooney narrative, but they came in form. Norwich away, I know they've obviously not been in great form, but that's never an easy place to go. That feels to me, I know the Rooney thing is the story there, but that feels to me like almost 2 statement wins, really, because they're 2 tough games.
I think the fact that it's on the back of what had gone before as well, isn't it? You know, we talk endlessly about how difficult it is to win 2 or 3 games in a row in the Championship. Well, Boro have done 6 in the league now, and that is, you know, at any stage of the season, no matter what 6 Championship teams you put in there, to win 6 games in a row in this league is a monumental effort. And even more so, given that it's come off the back of 7 games at the start of the season when they couldn't win 1. So, I mean, it's some turnaround, isn't it? It really is. And it's put Boro into a great position now going into another, I think, we've got 3 more league games and obviously the cup game before the next international break. Then we're obviously into the whole Christmas spell and everything that goes along with that. But, for the games that are coming up, Boro are going into it now in a great position.
We won't, just before that, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, just remember, please subscribe if you haven't already. We do really appreciate that. We want to get those subscriber numbers up, and leave comments. We enjoy and appreciate the comments that we get in the videos. So please do leave a comment if you want to discuss anything. And as Scott mentioned in the last video, we're going to do a Q&A in the next couple of weeks. And if you're listening on podcasts, then please rate, review, obviously like and subscribe there as well. We won't labour on that Birmingham win because obviously it's nearly a week ago now. But speaking to everyone who was there, it felt like Boro absolutely got what they deserved by getting the late winner.
Yeah, it might just have been 1-0, but it certainly wasn't a snatch and grab, really. It was just a case of our Boro, going to put all of this good work together and just not be able to get that final breakthrough. And then obviously they did do that. And the same was true on Tuesday, really. I mean, again, just a 1-goal win at Carrow Road, but actually a much more convincing performance, certainly for big chunks of the second half, than that scoreline suggests, really. And so, while Boro have won both of those games by an odd goal, they've fully deserved to win both of them. And it hasn't just been a case of them hanging on. And if anything, I feel like we're getting back to the kind of solid performances from last season where, Boro are turning up, whether it be at home or away, and controlling games and finding a way to win them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that Norwich, I did watch the Norwich game. And I thought Boro made it look easy, really. I thought the scoreline really flattered Norwich. The second half, once they'd scored, I know obviously Norwich hit the bar and had 1 or 2 minor moments, but Boro always felt in control, really. Obviously, the second goal, I was going to say kills it. It does, doesn't it? Because Norwich's goal was in the 98th minute.
But that's immaterial, isn't it? Yeah, and I mean, and like you say, the degree of control that Boro have had over both of those games is probably one of the most impressive things, because that was a big part of their play last season, wasn't it? They were controlling games. They were dictating the pace of games. And a bit of that went out the window in the first couple of months of the season. You know, there were a couple of matches in there that were helter-skelter and a bit all over the place and very un-Boro-esque, if you like, from what they've been like under Carrick. It feels like a lot of that control is back now.
And key to Boro's control this season and last is Hayden Hackney in the middle of the park, shifting it forward, obviously. Stoke City on Saturday. Hackney's missing after picking up that yellow card in midweek. Now, those Carrick quotes afterwards, where Carrick talked about it being bizarre, Hackney was booked because he was being taken off and his number didn't go up initially. So he didn't know he was coming off. And I thought those Carrick quotes really were as strong as you see
from Carrick, yeah.
From Carrick.
I mean, there was clearly a real sense of annoyance about it, because I think, you know, the referee had said afterwards, well, you know, I'd told him that he was the one coming off. He knew it. But as Carrick rightly says, well, yeah, that's fine. But the referees can get that wrong until you actually see.
You're a player, you look at the ball.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's your signal to go off, nothing else. So I think there's annoyance because he's a big player, isn't he? You know, like you say, he's pretty much fundamental to everything that happens in that Boro midfield. And yes, we've seen Barlaser play with him. Yes, we've seen Howson play with him. What we haven't really had to see yet is Howson play with Barlaser, which is probably what we're going to see this weekend. And that's going to be interesting to see how the dynamic of that works without Hayden in there kind of dictating it and you know, being the fulcrum in that midfield that he's been. So I think that's one interesting aspect going into this weekend. And I think you're right. I think Carrick's reaction to all of that was a giveaway about just how important Hayden Hackney is to this Boro team.
Just two things on that. I think kind of firstly, you mentioned Barlaser there. It was desperately unfortunate to miss out, wasn't he, in midweek against Norwich. I think he's had the best run of form, the best run of games he's had since joining the club, and he'll obviously want to take his chance again on Saturday. And I think Hackney and Barlaser proved in the games before Norwich, in 2-3 games, that they can be effective and work as a pair, which we've questioned in the past. Secondly, it's obviously a huge blow to lose a player like Hackney, be it just for one game. And Stoke, you know, have won the last couple of games. They'll be a tough test. I thought Stoke were one of the best teams to come to Riverside last year. They came at the time when they were having a real upturn, and then they fell away a bit, didn't they? But Hackney's played an awful lot of football. He's going away every international break. He's now playing for England under 21s. He's still of no age. Just a slight breather in the long run might well do him. He doesn't look like he needs it. And Carrick has eyes on him every single game. So if he thought even slightly that he needed a breather, then clearly he'd give him one. But Boro do have Barlaser to come in. You know, that's a strong option to come in. He'd get in most championship midfields. It might not be the worst thing for Hackney.
It might not, and they've obviously got this Exeter game coming up on Tuesday night, haven't they? And so there's definitely would have had to have been a chance that Hackney wouldn't have played in, what would it have been? Saturday Birmingham, Tuesday Norwich, Saturday Stoke, Tuesday Exeter, Saturday Plymouth. Would he have played in all 5 of those games? Quite possibly not. So I guess what it means is if he's not playing on Saturday, he's pretty much nailed on, you would think, to then come back in on Tuesday, which immediately strengthens Boro's midfield for what is, as we've said many times on previous vids, a massive chance for them now in that cup competition to go really, really deep in that. So yeah, I don't think it is the worst thing in the world. The only uncertainty, like I say, is we haven't really seen much of Howson and Barlaser as a unit playing together. Now, maybe it won't be that, but obviously with O'Brien not a factor either, you would imagine it will be that tomorrow. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works. And, will Barlaser have to be a little bit more kind of dynamic, at least be breaking into the box a little bit more than maybe he has done in previous games with no Hackney there to do that? We'll see. But yeah, from Hackney's point of view, I think you're probably right. I think, you know, a little break will certainly do him no harm. And like I say, I think it makes him a pretty much nailed-on starter on Tuesday night.
You mentioned there O'Brien, and he's just one of several players who are either injured or have been injured. And that makes Boro's run of form all the more impressive, doesn't it? They've had to do it at one stage or another without a number of key players. Darragh Lenihan, for example, has been one of the first names on the team sheet since Carrick came in. Obviously, O'Brien had impressed. Latte Lath missed midweek through illness. The Tommy Smith injury. Vandenberg's been in and out. The Howson injury. Bangura. Before that, you could go on and on. But that Tommy Smith one feels like a big blow because he has been one of Carrick's Mr. Reliables, hasn't he, since he came in? And at this stage of his career, an injury like that, hellfire, it's not a career ender, but it's huge. It's a rotten blow for him, isn't it? It really is, to miss the rest of the season at this stage of his career.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so Carrick, I was obviously at Michael Carrick's presser yesterday, and he was at pains to say, look, you know, it's not absolutely definite that we're not going to see him again this season, but there's a good chance. You know, at the very least, we're talking the right back end of the season if we're going to see him at all. So, yeah, to all intents and purposes, out of the season. Yeah, firstly, massive blow for Tommy Smith himself because, like you say, he's 31 now. You know, yeah, he'll come back and everything, but, you know, it'll be a year down the line. Other players might have established themselves in the team in that period, etc., etc. So, from a personal level, it's a massive blow. From a Boro level, yeah, you know, he's been the steady Eddie at right back, hasn't he? Right through Carrick's reign, really. He's been Michael Carrick's go-to right back when he's had a number of different options. Now, in terms of those options, there are players there who can step in. I mean, you know, Vandenberg, while it might not necessarily be his kind of position that he ends up in long term, because I think he will end up being a centre half, you know, is clearly more than capable of playing there and has looked, you know, pretty much to the manner born, hasn't he, since he's come in at Boro? His transition into English football and into Boro has gone really well. So I don't have a massive worry about him playing there. Dykesteel's obviously now back on the bench, back in the squad after recovering from his summer injury. He's another option. If or when Lenihan comes back, you would imagine potentially he goes into the side, so McNair becomes another option at right back. Worst case scenario, Jones could play there. Be a very different right back and a very different defensive setup, but he could. So there are options. It's not like Boro are suddenly bereft at right back, but it's just the fact that you know, they are losing their number one, and as Michael Carrick was at pains to stress this week as well, a very, very big figure in the dressing room. And for all that Carrick says, you know, he'll still have a role to play in that. We still want him in and around the place. He won't be performing the same role as if he's right in amongst training every day, in a match day every day. You know, his role will have to be different now. So I think that will be a loss as well. And then, as you allude to, you know, injuries are piling up for Boro, and injuries that all of a sudden, from yesterday's press conference, you know, there was the hope that Lenihan, McGree, Force, you know, they might just be 1 week little niggle thing. It sounds like all of them are a bit more serious than that. You know, we're not talking months for those players, but I don't think we'll see any of them on Saturday. I don't think we'll see any of them at Exeter. It's got to be a possibility we won't really see any of them till the international break. So, you know, there are issues that Boro are having to deal with there. Yeah, definitely.
At right back, Dykesteel, when he had those couple of games at the end of last season, when Smith was he injured or suspended? I can't remember. But then Dykesteel got sent off. I felt harshly at Rotherham, and that was the you know, the door open for Smith to come back in. I thought Dykesteel looked really good there, but I suspect that Vandenberg will get the chance to make that his own. I think Carrick has waxed lyrical about Vandenberg at every possible opportunity, hasn't he? And he's played him at every possible opportunity. Do you? I mean, my gut tells me that he'll get the chance to make that his spot. And I agree, he's clearly a centre half long term, but for now, I think he might be the one to get the nod at right back. What do you reckon?
I think so. I think it'll be Vandenberg tomorrow. I think that there have been opportunities to put Dijksteel in the last month or so when he's been back in and around it, and it hasn't really happened, has it? I think if Carrick had thought Dijksteel is my definite next best, we would have seen him get more minutes before now than he has had. So, I think he probably thinks Vandenberg's a safer defensive option, maybe. And given how wide open Boro were at times in those first couple of months of the season, I think it's probably understandable that Carrick's wanted to tighten things up there. And I think he probably thinks that Vandenberg is a safer bet for that. So, yeah, I think we'll see Vandenberg there. It may be that Dijksteel gets the nod at Exeter because, while as I say, it's a massive opportunity for Boro, I still think there will be changes down there. I think Carrick will shuffle his pack to a degree. So we might see Dijksteel there, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't Vandenberg against Stoke.
Just on the subject of Exeter, Scott's at Exeter Tuesday. I'm at Plymouth next Saturday. If you're a fan who's doing both, there and back on the Tuesday and then there and back on the Saturday, do us a favour, give us a shout on Twitter because I'm planning to do something either on here or either a written piece next week. So
it's a hell of a week for the supporters, isn't it? It really is.
It's some effort to do one, isn't it? Never mind both.
Oh, I mean, to anyone who's done Norwich as well last week, then Exeter, then Plymouth, my goodness me, that is some effort. Yeah, we're splitting it up, aren't we? I'm doing the Exeter Magical Mystery Tour. You're doing Plymouth. So, we shall see. Yeah,
so just give us a nudge on Twitter or email dominic.shaw@newsquest.co.uk. And if you're doing them both and you're up for a chat. Tomorrow, before we have a brief look ahead to the cup game next week, Stoke. How the hell do you ever know what to expect of Stoke in the Championship? Every year, when they came to Riverside last season and they looked impressive, I thought, maybe they're building a bit of momentum and they're going to be a force this season. And yet it looks to be the kind of Stoke that we've seen every year for the last 3 or 4 years. They're such a weird team, aren't they?
Yeah, I think what I would say is I think probably some of the classic Stoke cliches are a bit out of place now. They're a better footballing side, aren't they, than they ever were under Pulis, and in that, can you do it at Stoke on a wet Tuesday night kind of era? So I think that's out of the way, but they're still very inconsistent. And for a side that still carry a pretty big wage bill and, have turned an awful lot of money over since they were relegated from the top flight, they've never really looked... I know you said last season they flirted with it, but they've never really made a serious promotion push.
It was always too late.
And for all that there's been the upturn, they obviously beat Sunderland last weekend and they beat Leeds in midweek, which were 2 massive results for them. They needed them because they were looking, pretty bang average before that. So there's clearly a threat there. And judging on the last 2 results, Alex Neil's clearly turned them around a bit from when they were hovering just above the relegation zone. But it still feels like a game at home that Boro should be going into with every thought of winning it, and they'll start as deserved favourites, Boro, even given, as I say, Stoke's results in the last week.
I really like Neil as a manager, and you'll obviously have dealt with him when he was at Sunderland.
Yeah.
Before those 2 wins, Sunderland and Leeds, do you think his job will have been getting to the stage of perhaps being at risk? Or
I don't. Obviously, I don't pretend to follow the minutiae of what's going on Stoke closely. I haven't got the impression that there's a massive groundswell of fans against him, and that is it was a real kind of bear pit of a place, the Bet365, with fans turning against him and things getting toxic. But having said that, how many chances is he going to get when, there is money being spent there? And, when he went from Sunderland, right at the start of last season, I think the expectation was that he was swapping them because Stoke were in a much better position to challenge than Sunderland. There was going to be more investment. Probably importantly for him, he was going to have control over that investment, because I think that was
investment in the type of players he wanted.
Yeah, why he left Sunderland, because in the kind of Warnock Wilder way of Boro, he wasn't singing from the same hymn sheet as the people who were actually driving the signings there. So that hasn't happened, has it? So yeah, I think there has to be pressure on him because at some stage, you know, Stoke have to start delivering. And what I would say is, I think he's working with a kind of sporting director figure, isn't he, that he's worked with before? And it feels like a lot of what Stoke have put in place there is around him. So it might be difficult for them then to get shot. But yeah, the pressure must have been on before these two results. But obviously, you know, coming off the back of them, they're going to be in a bit of a different place now when they come to Boro tomorrow.
Stoke Boro just reminds me of, I know this is Stoke Boro rather than Boro Stoke, but the Premier League season when Boro went there late in the season, or late-ish, and it was clear. You know, it was clear that Carrick was on the way out and things were collapsing, and they go off at the corner. Remember the away end are in the corner, and one game always comes when you name any fixture. One game always comes to mind.
Well, it was the first game of that season, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, the 1-1. Was it a Shaqiri free kick?
Shaqiri, yeah, it was 1-1, wasn't it? And I might have mentioned it on this vid before, but I came away from that game thinking, I don't really know whether that's a good point or a bad point, or whether that shows that Boro can compete, or whether it's going to be a massive opportunity missed come the end of the season. And actually, in hindsight, it was probably a game that Boro had to win to get up and running and actually get some points on the board and get some momentum that never really came, wasn't it? But yeah, that's probably the Stoke game that sticks most in my mind, that first one of the Carrick Premier League
season. Yeah, it was a glorious day, wasn't it? You remember the Mark Hughes? Was it Mark Hughes? Mark Hughes was their manager, wasn't he then?
Yeah.
You talked there about you talked there about, you know, Neil having turned things around slightly in the last couple of days, last week or so, last couple of games. You were at Rockcliffe, as you mentioned, on Thursday this week, talking to Michael Carrick, and he was talking about how Boro have turned things around this season. What was the general concept? What was his general message then?
I think it's what he's been saying all along, which is that, I mean, so the big thing in that period, and certainly the big thing with Carrick, was that he didn't panic. There was no knee-jerk reactions. There was no knee-jerk decisions. There was no crazy team selections that you sometimes get from managers when things aren't really working, especially a manager in his first job. So I kind of said to him, well, look, you know, do you think that's just you? Is it just that you are that level-headed, calm, patient person, and so whatever happened, that was always going to be you? Or is it a reflection of experience? Is it managers you've worked under at Man United? Is it coaches you've had that actually you've actively thought that's not the right way to do it? You know, being knee-jerk, doing all that is not the right way to do it. When I go into management, that's not how I'm going to be. And in classic kind of Michael Carrick fashion, he kind of agreed that it was probably a bit of both. That, you know, yes, that is his personality. It's not in his nature to be shouty, screamy, fly off the handle, massively emotional. You know, he is a very reasoned, very patient, very rational person, come what may. But then he also did say, but yeah, you know, I've been in lots of different dressing rooms. I've seen how lots of different managers operate. I want to be a manager who is calm and is the same whether you've won 5-0 or lost 5-0. And, you know, I don't want to be putting across to my players a sense of panic, a sense that I don't trust in you. Now, you know, what would be interesting was that if he ever found himself in a dressing room where actually he didn't believe that the players could turn it round, what do you do then? But he is absolutely adamant that he was always sure that this bad run wouldn't continue, and that Boro had the players to do it, and that actually they were getting more things right than wrong, and that it would turn. And you know, fair play to him, he did stand by that, and he did, you know, constantly reinforce that both publicly and presumably privately. And it's held things together, hasn't it? And it's meant that when things have turned, it's felt like a sustainable turn of form rather than just a flash in the pan that would lead to a season where it goes up and down and up and down and up and down.
And I know we're slightly arguing over old ground here, but it's probably testament to his character, isn't it? That in those difficult spells, he never kind of pleaded any mitigation, really. He never, the message never changed, did it? When other managers could and have. You know, Chris Wilder did, didn't he, last year when he talked about the players who've come in maybe not being ready, or development players, as he put it. Carrick could have very easily this season said, well, look, you only have to look at the players we've lost. And yet, in actual fact, he was saying the opposite, wasn't he? I don't want to use that as an excuse, even though he'd have been well within his rights and understandable to say, look, like, give us time. We've just lost 50 million quid's worth of talent. But it's credit to him that he never went into self-preservation mode at any stage, did he?
And you do feel that in the long run, that will probably be beneficial to Latterlath, to Silvera, to Vandenberg.
Well, I think we're probably seeing it now with Engel and Greenwood and the others.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, if you're one of those players who's been brought in and 6 games into the season, your manager's saying, well, look, you know, these are just kids. I can't get results with them. And like you say, we've seen it. We've seen it at Boro before, seen it up the road at Sunderland before. You know, managers saying, look, you know, the recruitment just hasn't been right. You know, I've got a load of kids here. What am I meant to do with them? I need a man to do a man's job, blah, 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 blah. None of that from Michael Carrick. And like you say, Sam Greenwood could easily have you know, had Carrick presented himself differently. Sam Greenwood, 2 months into the season, could easily have thought, well, I'm sat in the bench here. I'm probably going to be on the bench the rest of the season. And the manager's clearly not having us. But that hasn't been the case. You know, he's talked up these young players or these summer signings. He's integrated them when he's felt right. And like you say, you know, Greenwood now looks absolutely nailed on starter, perfectly home of the Championship, potentially one of the steals of the season if Boro eventually do trigger this £1.5 million deal. And Gell looks settled now and is the, you know, starting to look like the player that we were led to believe Boro had got when they got him. You know, Latterlath, obviously, he's been unfortunate with the illness at the weekend, didn't get the chance to be part of that squad. He's okay now. He will be back in the squad. Still looks probably like a better impact player, but looks like a good impact player. And again, I suspect he'll probably start at Exeter in the week if he doesn't start on Saturday. So, yeah, you're starting to see that. And I think a lot of the fact that they are now integrating so well is because of the way that Carrick handled them in those first difficult couple of months.
You're at the Riverside on Saturday then, before we wrap up. Prediction-wise, will Boro continue the charge?
I think they will. Yeah, I think they will. I mean, like you said, you know, Stoke do have the potential to be dangerous. I spoke to a couple of lads who cover Sunderland who were at the game last weekend, and they said, yeah, Stoke probably did deserve to beat Sunderland. And obviously they've gone and beaten Leeds in the week, which is a good result. So I think there'll be a threat, but I think Boro have enough to wear them down. I think as we've seen now, Greenwood's playing really well. I thought Crooks as a 10 at Norwich looked great, looked better than he's been on a number of games this season when maybe it looked like that wasn't working. Well, it looks like it's working now. You've got Coburn, and then, like I say, you potentially got Latterlath to come on for the last 20 minutes. So I think Boro will take the game to Stoke. I think they'll be full of confidence. I think they'll be on the front foot. I think they'll win it 2-0, 2-1, 2-0.
Brilliant. Yeah, I fancy Boro. I fancy Boro to I think they might just have a bit too much, and I think they'll take confidence. We touched on this in the pod and the vid beforehand, but I think they'll take confidence from the way they won last week. They just stuck at it. You know, they didn't panic, even though it looked like it was going to be one of those frustrating afternoons. They stuck at it and obviously got the breakthrough late on. Let's hope for another Boro win on Saturday. And I'm back in the swing of things now, so we'll be back regularly on the vids, on the pods.
We will.
Remember, if you are doing Exeter and Plymouth, first up, fair play. Secondly, give us a shout if you fancy having a chat at some point next week. If you watch on YouTube, then do remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and please rate and review if you listen to us on pods. Thanks again for watching and listening. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll be back next week.